All right, so Elisha is one of the great prophets of the Old Testament, and he's proven that fact over and over again. For instance, you might remember that he participated in healing a young man from the dead. That's not something that happens all the time. As we look at today's passage, we're looking at something in or related to the life of Elisha. And I already mentioned this, that it's something we can relate to. I mentioned about this place in Fort Lauderdale this morning, looking at a $480,000 house, no property taxes. It sounds like a lot of money, but with today's market, it's really not that bad. And you're looking at today's market and what you could get, and you're looking at the taxes that you don't have to pay and the annual repair fees that you pay for your house and all these things. You know, when you own a house from 1890, you've got to pay some repairs, unfortunately. And you're like, there's really not a big difference between the mortgage that would be left. And man, what would life be like living in paradise? And I met a man, his name was Jake. All right, young guy named Jake, and he's hanging out on the shores of Fort Lauderdale, and I said, hey, why don't you come and swim with us? And he was afraid, he couldn't swim, and I tried to encourage him to come, and I said, listen, I had too many bad experiences. I said, you're not going to have a bad experience with me, I'll keep you safe. And I said, man, you live in paradise here. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, look at these rich houses. Could you imagine living in these rich houses? He says, well, yeah, I live 3 blocks down. And I'm like, man, this guy lives in paradise. He's afraid to go in the water. Man, what would it be like to live like Donald Trump could live? What would it be like to have? And we could easily get carried away with the desire for something different, some different kind of living, or maybe it's the better house or the better car or the better job or higher paying job and all these things. And we can become so distracted by that stuff that it ends up messing with our walk with God and could replace our walk with God with the desire for that type of stuff. Well, the last time I was here with you guys, which now it was 3 Sundays ago. That last time we were here together, we saw a guy named Naaman. And Naaman was a great military general in Syria, and he becomes a leper. His life would become a life of isolation and illness, but then he hears that there's a prophet in Israel. And when he visits Elisha the prophet, he expects some big, extravagant healing. Instead, he's told to go and wash in the Jordan 7 times and be healed. And if you remember, at first, he was angry. He's like, aren't the waters of Syria better than any water in Israel, the waters of Jordan? But ultimately, he complies, and God heals him. The prophet's not even there. God heals him. All of this that happened is from God. Every work that Elisha carries out is from God. God does it all. And when Naaman's flesh is restored, Naaman the leper, former leper, if I call him the leper, what I mean today is the one who once was a leper, because now he's healed. He's not a leper anymore. So Naaman, the military general, his flesh is restored, and he goes back to visit Elisha, and he offers the prophet a gift. You might remember. But Elisha refuses to take that gift. He doesn't want to. You remember Naaman came with like 3 million, what's equivalent to about $3 million. So he had money from the king of Syria. He comes with like $3 million, and he's ready to offer the prophet an extravagant gift, and the prophet says, no, this healing is a gift from the Lord. Now Elisha, at that moment, Elisha's life could change. His life could change dramatically. He could accept a gift. He could take the gift from the hand of Naaman and be a rich man for the rest of his life. But for some reason, the text doesn't tell us necessarily, although I think it implies it. For some reason, Elisha does not take that gift. And what I'm seeing is that it has to be clear to Naaman that this is from the Lord, that this is a free healing from God. It's not something that could be bought with silver and with gold, and that there is a true God, and he is in Israel, and go back home to Syria and tell your people about this one true God. Elisha apparently doesn't want there to be any confusion whatsoever about the character of God and about his work. Naaman, the former leper, the healed man, is a changed man. He knows what he says in verse 15 of 2 Kings 5. He says, "There is no God in all the earth but in Israel." And so from now on, Naaman would serve and worship the Lord and him alone. And so Naaman is now healed. His life has been changed. His life has been restored. And where we left off is that he's on his way back home. He's on his way back, a several-week journey back home to the land of Syria to spread the word that there is a God in Israel and he is the only God. It's a pretty awesome situation. What he received from God, and God didn't even want anything for it. It's a little bit of a picture of the gospel, right? I mean, what we receive, it's something like the gospel in that we receive salvation, and God doesn't ask for payment. He made the entire payment himself in Christ on the cross. But there's another guy in this account, and his name is Gehazi. And we're going to call him Gehazi the servant. All right, he is the servant of Elisha. And Gehazi has seen this Syrian general come with a ton of money. Remember, 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, about $3 million, if our estimates are right, about $3 million. These estimates are never perfect. We can't know for sure. But we're calling it around $3 million. That's about the amount of money that Joe Biden is losing a week in his campaign. That's why the Democrats pushed him out. I don't know how much he's losing, but they're like, we're not going to support you anymore. Let's forego the entire democratic process and pick our own people. But anyway, he comes with $3 million in approximately in today's market. And that's great riches. I mean, anyone could look at that and say, man, that could change. Even just a bit of that could change my life. Again, Elisha took nothing. But Gehazi is like, do you realize what you've done? You know what I mean? He's like, think about how that money could, in his mind, think about how that money could change your life. With only a portion of that, everything would be different. You wouldn't have to worry about money anymore. One less thing. And so Gehazi could live comfortably. He can eat whatever he wants. He can buy whatever he wants. He can live wherever he wants. You have to admit, that'd be a little tempting. Wouldn't it be just even a little tempting to think, I could live like a millionaire. Wouldn't it just be a little tempting? If you're being honest with yourself, it would be a little tempting. There was that like the 1/8 of that house that we looked at. I was like, man, if that house is really $450, we have to buy it. Because it's probably like a $2 or $3 million property. You almost have to find a way to buy it and then turn around and sell it in a couple of years. It's like, man, could you imagine living in paradise? There has to be something of a temptation in your mind. So what are you going to do with that temptation? For Gehazi, the temptation is too great. There's no way Gehazi can pass up this opportunity in his mind. There's no way he's going to let Naaman the leper go back without paying up. And so he starts to think. He starts to scheme. How can I get my hands on that money? How can I get my hands on that bread? Check it out. 2 Kings 5:20. But Gehazi, I was talking with Joe, I was kind of laughing about that. I said, one of the reasons why I wanted to preach tonight is because of this phrase right here. You don't want to wait a month and start your sermon with but Gehazi. You're like in the middle of a paragraph, really. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard to, it's hard enough to go 2 weeks, it was 2 Sundays, right? Hard enough to go 2 Sundays with a sermon that starts with but Gehazi, because you're kind of like right in the middle. But I think there's enough of an episode change where we were dealing with the healing of Naaman the leper, and now the episode is kind of changing a little bit, enough to really kind of see at least another sub-paragraph here. But Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God. Who's the man of God here? Is Gehazi the man of God? He's the servant of Elisha, who is the man of God. So Gehazi thinks this. Gehazi thought, behold, my master has spared this Naaman, the Aramean, the Syrian. Remember, are the Arameans friends of Israel or enemies of Israel? Does anyone remember? The Syrians were enemies. They were not the best guys. They were not the greatest people here. They were enemies of Israel. Not much earlier than this passage, the king of Israel, former king of Israel, Ahab, was killed by the Syrians in battle. So I mean, these guys, they've been at war on and off. Well, anyway. Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, thought, behold, my master has spared this Naaman, the military general of Syria, by not receiving from his hands what he brought, the money that he brought. As the Lord lives, I will run after him and take something from him. I don't want you to read too much further ahead here. I will go get my money. I'm going to get that bread. I'm going to earn my paycheck. And look at the language he uses. As the Lord lives. So here's a guy who is a religious guy because he is a servant of the man of God. And he's scheming to get rich, and he's using spiritual language. As the Lord lives, I'm going to go get my money. I'm going to go get my green. Gehazi sounds a lot like prosperity preachers today, doesn't he? God gave me that private jet. And Oral Roberts taught me that this is how preachers ought to live. That was Kenneth Copeland who said that, I think? Kenneth Copeland. He sounds a lot like the wealth-building people today who use spiritual talk. But it's far from spiritual. It's far from spiritual. People who are after money are not spiritual people. Remember, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. But again, people like this, sometimes religious people like the prosperity gospel preachers today, they use spiritual language in their efforts to get rich and to live like wealthy, rich millionaires. And so you just look at some of the money some of these guys make. It's outrageous amounts of money to own a private jet. That's a joke. It's a joke for a preacher to own a private jet. That preacher's a Gehazi is what he is. All Gehazi wants here, it's hypocrisy. Gehazi, he wants money. He wants personal benefit from the whole situation. And so he decides to run after him and take something from him. He seeks after personal gain. Elisha, the prophet, he wants Naaman, the Syrian, the leper, to be healed for free. And he wants Naaman to go back and talk about the Lord and the Lord's work and the Lord's mercy and the free gift of healing that God gave. He didn't charge him nothing. He didn't charge him a thing. He wanted Naaman to understand God's grace. Gehazi is not thinking about any of that. Gehazi is thinking about getting mine. And there are a lot of people like that today. There are a lot of people who use religion to get rich. Obviously, there are a lot of people like that. For others, there are people who use religion for a different kind of gain. They'll use it for personal advancement in a community, or they'll use it for a good name. And people like this often do get exposed eventually. They'll use religious language or their so-called religion for personal benefit. And that's Gehazi. That's what Gehazi is right here. Gehazi wants the money. And so he goes after Naaman to carry out his deceptive plot in verses 21 and 22. So Gehazi pursued Naaman. Gehazi is, who's Gehazi? He is the servant of the prophet of the Lord. And so therefore, he's supposed to be a servant of the Lord, because Elisha was once in that position, right? And he became the chief prophet. He was a servant of Elijah. So Gehazi is the servant. Naaman is he was the former leper, the military general of Syria. So let's try to keep that together as we read through this. So Gehazi, the servant of the Lord, pursued Naaman, the healed leper, the general of one of the generals of the military of Syria. So Gehazi pursues Naaman. When Naaman saw one running after him, he came down from the chariot to meet him and said, "Is all well?" And Gehazi said, "All is well. My master has sent me, saying, Behold, just now 2 young men of the sons of the prophets have come to me from the hill country of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of clothes." And so is Gehazi reporting the truth? Or is Gehazi like the media? Is Gehazi a CNN reporter? Or an MSNBC reporter? You know what I mean? Like, is Gehazi giving truth here? Or is Gehazi spitting out lies? What's he doing? He's lying! He's lying! He tells Naaman the leper that the whole situation's changed. And he presents this false need, which, by the way, people do all the time. People present false needs all the time. I've had people come into the church and ask for money, right? And listen, by the way, if you're ever in a real situation where you have need, you come and talk to us. We want to help people. We have a fund set up to help people, especially people with legitimate needs. We want to. Now, we're not going to go chasing people down. Hey, unless it's an obvious situation, we may say, "Hey, do you need any help?" We've done that from time to time, but in general, we're not going to go hunting around and "Hey, who here needs help?" You come if you need help. But we've had people come into the church and ask for money, and I remember one time I'm sitting in my office, I see these people, they pull up, and I open the door. When I worked out of the office here, I'd keep this door locked because we had some crazies here from time to time. And I invite these guys in, and I sit down with them, and they're telling me their story, and they need money for, I don't remember what it was. And I said, "I want you to be completely honest with me right now. Are you high on heroin right now?" And they were shocked. They were shocked that, they were like, oh no. I said, "Listen to me. Tell me the truth." And they put their heads down. And listen, I've been around drugs. You know what I mean? I've been around drugs enough to really spot. Just several weeks ago, there was a kid, and all the signs of marijuana use were there. And I said, "Hey, be honest with me. Did you smoke before you came here?" And he said, "Oh, no, I didn't do that." And I'm like, I know what it looks like. I know what the eyes look like. I know a little bit about that because I spent my youth around some of that stuff, so I understand, And these people here, they came in and they were high on heroin, and they did admit it. And what they had wanted was the church to pay for their drugs. That's what they really want. Now, that's not the need they presented to me. They presented the need that they didn't have money to pay for whatever it was, their heat or their rent or something like that, or their groceries. But if they didn't spend all their money on heroin, they wouldn't have needed money for groceries. So if we went and paid them that money, we're paying for that. We're paying for their drugs. So we're super careful about how we give out money. Most of the time, we're super careful about that because the church is not going to pay for someone's cigarettes. You know what I mean? If a person person's smoking cigarettes and they want the church, or drinking alcohol. We're not going to pay for the church. We're not going to use God's money to pay for cigarettes and alcohol or drugs or anything like that. But anyway, in this case, it was a false need that was presented to me. I mean, it was a real need as a result of drugs, and they wanted someone to bail them out, to enable them. And we didn't help them financially, but I did give them the gospel. And I offered to give them financial advice and try to help them get off their drugs and stuff like that. And they didn't take me up on any of that stuff, because those people never really do. they're just looking for their way out. But Gehazi here presents a false need. He lies. He lies. And he presents this need of two sons. Hey, listen, there are two sons of the prophets who are in need. And so Gehazi asks for, look what he asked for. He asked for a talent of silver. He asked for a talent of silver and 2 changes of clothes. Now, if our numbers are correct, this is about $15,000. If our numbers are correct, this is about $15,000. So it's not a small ask. It's not like saying, hey, can I borrow $5? Can I borrow $50 here to, He's asking for something like $15,000. Now it's considerably less than the $3 million that Naaman Naaman, the leper, former leper. It's considerably less than the $3 million that Naaman is traveling with. 15,000 is kind of a small ask in comparison to 3 million. And so, when you look at it that way, maybe Naaman thinks, I think this is what I could get away with and nobody misses it. By the way, people do that in churches. People skim. That's why we have things set up. Part of the reason why we have things set up the way we have things set up, where money gets counted with multiple people around. I mean, there are churches where people have skimmed off the top. They've taken money from the offerings and put them in their pockets. Or one local pastor, it's appalling. It's appalling. He used the church's credit card to pay his kid's college bill. And he ran up a debt on the church. Local guy ran up a debt on the church that he couldn't pay back. And of course the church split over that, and that guy should have resigned at the time, and he should have been out of the ministry, but that didn't happen. Nevertheless, we have this relatively small amount of money. We're going to call it 15. What's 15,000 into 3 million? What percent is that? 3 million. 300,000 is 10%. 30,000 is, what's that? That's 1%. 30,000 is. It would be like 0.5%. I think we're dealing with 0.5%. It's 0.5%. It's just 1/2 of a point. You know what I mean? So he's only asking for less than 1%, 1/2 of 1%. But I mean, that's $15,000. It's still $15,000. That's a lot of money. It's a significant amount of money to get for free. For Naaman, the leper, he's thinking this is not that big of a deal given what's happened. He's happy. He's happy. I mean, listen, he's still walking away. And not that this is something that's on his mind. He was willing to give up all that. But you're walking away with 99.5% of your money. And if my numbers are right, here, you're walking with 99.5%. You're giving away 0.5%. You're taking that for a healing. It's not bothering you. So, he has no problem giving that up. In verse 23, Naaman said, "Be pleased to take 2 talents." And he urged him, and bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags with 2 changes of clothes, and gave them to 2 of his servants, and they carried them before him. So this is like $30,000 in today's marketplace. So he's given up like 1%. Only 1%. Hey, you want 15? Take 30. Take double what you're asking for. I'm happy to give it. My life's been changed. My life's been saved from living like a leper. And so he splits the money up into 2 bags, and each talent of silver would weigh between 66 and 84 pounds. So imagine, now anyone here ever work with dumbbells? I know you work with dumbbells. Anyone else work with do you work with dumbbells or barbells? Both? Okay. Tom, you work with dumbbells? I'm puny. but there was a time when not that long ago where I was lifting a little more, and I don't really lift, but when I was lifting, I would sometimes work with maybe the 60s and the 65s and try to do, I would do dumbbell press. I could do dumbbell press with I'm telling you, this is not a small amount of weight. When I'm picking up probably, I think they were about 55s was the last I was working with or so, which is a small amount, but I was higher reps. You're going to take that 55 and you're going to grab it and pull up, and you're going to, walk around with your, these aren't, it's not like, you're not walking around like, 65 pound dumbbells. You're not, you might be, but most people aren't going to be walking around like it's heavy, right? It's heavy even for a person who lifts. Joe, would you say 65 pound dumbbell is fairly heavy? That's heavy. You're not curling that easily. You know what I mean? So we're talking about 2 bags between 65 and 85. Tom, right? Would you think it'd be easy to carry around an 85-pound sack of money? You know what I mean? This is not super easy, okay? So, they're heavy. You wouldn't want to drop them on your feet, that's for sure. So we're talking about these 2 big, heavy bags where they're filled with silver, filled with money, which wouldn't be easy to carry. And Naaman sends them home. He sends those sacks with Gehazi, with 2 of his servants. That's 150 pounds of money to Gehazi's house. Anyone paying attention would see Gehazi's men there, walking around with the 75-pound bags of money, traveling with 2 men, either on a cart maybe or whatever. Gehazi carries out his burglary, because that's what it is. He's stealing this money. Would you call this an honest taking of money, an honest earning of? He's stealing the money because he lied to get it. He's lying. And by the way, there are salespeople that do the same thing. They lie so much. They will lie so much. I'm not saying all salespeople are like that, but there are some salespeople, they'll lie so much, they don't even, it's like their default mode is lying. They don't even realize they're lying. They lie so much to get your money. There are people out there, they want to get your money. So we're down there, and the people down there at the Club Wyndham, they're like, hey, we're going to give you a free week if you go have a breakfast with us tomorrow morning. And I'm like, no, thanks. She's like, oh, but you have to. I'm going to give you 2. I'm going to give you a second free week. I'm like, no, I'm okay. Oh, you have to. You can't say no. You can't say. I'm like, listen, what are the chances? She says, what are the chances? She actually said this to me. What are the chances he would do this meeting? This is after 10 minutes. And I said, 1 in a million. Well, 1 in a million. So she's like, you're saying there's a chance, So it wasn't quite like that. That's what I was alluding to. But she almost gave up at that point. But I know, because you're going to sit there, and those people they're going to sit there and essentially pressure you and oftentimes lie to you to get your money. Gehazi he's burglarized Naaman. He's stolen this money by lying about a false need. And verse 24, when he came to the hill, he took them from their hands. He took these bags of money from their hand and deposited them in the house, and he sent the men away, and they departed. And so everything here has gone according to plan, and even better, instead of $15,000 sitting around, he's got $30,000, equivalent to $30,000 sitting around. And he's probably feeling pretty good about himself right now. $30,000. That makes a difference. How many people here would be happy to have an extra $30,000 laying around? If $30,000 were laying around for me, honestly, I would pretend like I don't even have it. That's just how I am. I pretend like I don't even have it. But if I wanted to go on a nice cruise or something, I'd just do it with it. I'd be able to save most of the rest of it. But $30,000, that's some money. That's going to help you with your college bill, right? That's going to help me pay my kids' college. That's going to help me repair my house. That's going to help me, with the wonderful economy that our current administration has handed to us, right? $30,000 is going to help. Wouldn't be life-changing, but it's going to help. And if you have practically nothing, and Gehazi may not have much of anything, it's going to be even bigger. So if you have no money and someone's going to hand you $30,000, it's going to feel like $100,000. You know what I mean? It's going to feel a lot bigger. So Gehazi is on cloud 9. And no one is the wiser. And after the whole ordeal is over, he goes back to his master Elisha. And as soon as he gets there, Elisha asks him where he was. But he went and stood before his master. So Gehazi goes and stands before Elisha. And Elisha said to him, "Where have you been, Gehazi?" And Gehazi said, "Your servant went nowhere. I didn't go anywhere. I don't know what you're talking about." "What you talking about, Willis?" You know, one of those things, right? Elisha here seems a little suspicious over Gehazi's absence. But Gehazi lies again. This guy is a compulsive liar. He's had every opportunity to do the right thing. He's had every opportunity from the beginning. And every opportunity we see, he's lying. He does whatever he has to do to keep his money, because that is his God. Money. Money is his God. And it's too many people's God today. It's why people take the jobs they often take and be unhappy. I'm going to be unhappy my whole life. Think about this. 16 hours a day is what you have, essentially. 16 hours a day is what your waking average is. Talking about the average person here. 16, 17 hours. You're going to spend 8 to 12 hours of those 16 to 17 hours doing something you don't like. And you're going to do that for decades. If that's you, man, first off, I would not want to be you. I would not want to be you. I don't want to do something that I don't like doing just so that I could get a paycheck. I'm sorry, I'm not interested. Not interested. I remember working the docks at Roadway in college and just looking around. I hated it. I remember doing up and overs. Anyone know what an up and over is? An up and over is basically when they load like a 53-foot trailer with pallets. With what do you call those? It's what do you call them when the pallet's loaded up? I can't think of what it's called. But you basically got this whole 53-foot truck loaded, except you have about 2 feet on the top where nobody loaded anything. And so they take these rollers and stick them back there and roll boxes all the way to the back. And here I am, a 19-year-old kid way in the back, and in the winter it's like 10 degrees, and you're laying down in the back of a 53-foot trailer while someone rolls a box halfway, and the next guy rolls the box the rest of the way, and you're loading up. I'm thinking, people are doing this for a living. Sitting here loading trucks for a living. It's terrible. I hate it. Or in the summer, it'd be like 130 degrees in the back of that truck. It was the worst. And yet so many people there, they're just doing this because of the money. And it wasn't that great, believe me. It was like, at the time, I mean, it felt pretty decent. I think it was $15 an hour, which today is minimum wage. But it was, for some people, it's minimum wage. But it's like, here you're in the back of the truck, and the full-timers are making $20 an hour. $20 an hour. You're throwing your life away for $20 an hour. Man. Money is why families will sacrifice their children on the altar of prosperity and send them off to public schools while they both work in order to support a lifestyle that they don't need to live. Money is why people will spend money being a person's God is why they'll spend so much money on their houses and cars and vacations and food and lifestyle and refuse to give God his share. Money is the great and common God of this world, and Satan knows it, and he uses that money to destroy people and destroy families. And Gehazi's God is money. He's driven by desire for things but it costs him everything. Look at verse 26. Then he said to him, then Elisha said to Gehazi, did not my heart go with you? When the man turned from his chariot to meet you, did not my heart go with you? Were you not acting as my representative? Were you not acting on behalf of me? Were you not acting on behalf of the Lord God of Israel, the one true God, the creator of heaven and earth? Did not my heart go with you when the man turned from his chariot to meet you? When you took his money? Is it a time to receive money and to receive clothes and olive groves and vineyards and sheep and oxen and male and female servants? Gehazi received money and clothes, but Elisha mentions the types of things that Gehazi wants. Types of things Gehazi can gain from that money. Again, it's not always the money, it's what you can get from the money. Sheep, oxen, olive groves, vineyards, servants. Servants! Wouldn't it be nice if someone painted your toenails? I know that's a thing today, ladies. I'm not trying to get too harsh on you there, but wouldn't it be nice if I had a servant? Wouldn't it be nice if someone made all my meals for me? Or, although Roxanne is really great at making meals for, she does make all the meals for the family, except the steaks. I make the steaks. On the rare occasion, we have steaks or burgers or something like that. Wouldn't it be nice for someone to take care of you? That's what Gehazi wants. That's what most of America seeks after, even today. But Elisha's ministry is not for personal gain. Is the man of God worthy of his hire? Absolutely. Should those who proclaim the gospel get their living through the gospel? Absolutely. We're not questioning that. Paul teaches that in the New Testament. We understand that. But the man of God should not be living for money. Gehazi has run Elisha's name through the mud. He's run the Lord's name through the mud, and he's damaged the word of God. And therefore, Gehazi faces the judgment of God. Verse 27. Therefore, the leprosy of Naaman, remember Naaman was the military general of Syria who was formerly a leper and has now been healed. Therefore, the leprosy of Naaman shall cling to you and to your descendants forever. So he went out from his presence a leper, as white as snow. Gehazi immediately becomes a leper. His life is now forever changed for the worse. In Gehazi's desire for more, he lost everything. And that is the judgment that he faces for choosing money over God. And man, if that isn't a picture of so many people's lives today who in their sprint, they're chasing after money, lose their families, lose their wives, lose their kids. In this passage, we see greed. Was it Gordon Gekko who said, greed is good? I think it was Gordon Gekko. That was from Wall Street, like a 1980s movie. We see greed. We see greed that originates in idolatry, money being his god. We see greed that results in lies, in scheming, in stealing, and more. And the truth of God is damaged by a man who claimed to be from God, but Gehazi isn't from the Lord. Gehazi's actions don't reflect the actions of a man of God. Gehazi is not a man of the Lord. He is a man of the world, a man who seeks the lusts of the flesh, and he faces the judgment of God because of it. The consequences of Gehazi's sin would stay with him forever, and to stay with his family forever, contagiously. Naaman, on the other hand, so you look at this passage and you see two reversals. You see Naaman's life being down here in the illness and dumps, and his life is completely reversed. And you see Gehazi being with the man of God, the most powerful prophet. Boom. It's like the two guys switch places. Naaman the foreigner repents and is healed. Gehazi sins and is cursed, stricken with illness. Naaman the foreigner turns to the Lord as his God. Gehazi the Israeli turns away from the Lord for money and stuff. Naaman the Gentile, the non-Jew, goes away healed. Gehazi, the servant of the prophet of the Lord, goes away in leprosy and illness. Naaman's life forever changed for the better. Gehazi's forever cursed. In these two subparagraphs, in this paragraph, I see two men who couldn't be more different in the way their lives play out. One man is willing to give everything he has to the Lord, and he's a foreigner. And the other man wants to take things in the name of the Lord. I mean, these two guys are really set against each other. And in seeing these two guys, we see what kind of person we should be. We need to be committed to the Lord as our only God. We cannot choose money or stuff over him. We cannot compromise for the things of this world, or else we'll be subject to the judgment of God. We may be subject to the judgment of God, just as Gehazi was. We also see that faith is not based on birthright. That's kind of like a sub-theme that's kind of run throughout here. I mean, listen, Gehazi was the prophet. He was the servant of the prophet of the Lord, an Israeli. You would think he would be the guy that would follow the Lord. And Naaman was the foreigner. You would think he would be an enemy of God. And it turns out to be the opposite. And so just because your parents are okay with God or followers of the Lord doesn't mean you are. Just because you live in a household of people who are followers of the Lord, of God, doesn't mean that you're a follower of God. Just because your parents are saved doesn't mean that you're saved, though you may claim to be. You're not okay with God just because you're in a good church. You may be in a good family that has a legacy of faith, but if you don't place your faith in the Lord personally, it means nothing for you. Just kind of a side theme I see in here. In this passage, we see that the Lord demands exclusive worship, and he demands faithfulness from his people. But he'll judge those who seek to gain the things of this world and who seek those things in the ways Gehazi saw them, as gods lying and scheming to get the stuff in this world that will ultimately be burned up and destroyed. Let's take our hymnals and turn to, 639? Is that what we're, 639? If you're not sure you're saved, then you come and see me, and I'll get you lined up with someone who can explain the gospel to you a little bit more clearly. I don't want to see the gospel exactly laid out in this passage, but we did talk about that a little bit in the first part of the passage, and we do see their responses as pictures of how we might respond to the gospel even now. Where Christ, we talked about that this morning. Brother Joe was talking about some of the results, really, of the God. I mean, look at the forgiveness that we get from God, the being made alive through Christ, Satan being rendered powerless through Christ. So listen, if you're not sure you're saved, take care of that now. If there's sin in your life where you look and say, hey, you know what, man, I feel like I'm a lot like Gehazi. I feel like I've been living for the world. I feel like I've been living for the things of this world or for money. And some of this stuff has kind of become a god to me. Then take this time to repent and get right with God. Stand and sing 639.